Hello, my name's Steve Barrett. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of PR Week, and I'm delighted to be here with Alan VanderMolen. And Alan, your job title is so complicated and long. You're from Edelman. I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
I'm Alan VanderMolen. I'm President Chief Executive of Global Practices for Edelman. I'll leave the last bit off.
Well said, well said. Thanks for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about how you're seeing the market at the moment. We've gone through a sustained period of fairly heavy growth, actually. It's been good times for the last 12 months. But there appears to be a little bit of a slowing down in the market. What's causing that, and which areas is it particularly affecting?
Well, I'd say there's a bifurcation. I'd say in developed markets we're certainly seeing caution in spending. In general, across the board, in emerging markets the business is on fire. So we're seeing Western multinationals and emerging market companies spend a lot of money at home and starting to spend a little bit of money overseas. Western multinationals at home in Western markets, caution in particular in the health sector. Consumer sector looks good to us, digital looks very good, and CSR and business and social purpose doing very well.
So what should we expect in Q4 and then moving into 2012 with all the business planning going on?
I think you're going to see a lot of marketing communications spent for efficiency. So I think you're going to see some money diverted from advertising and public relations. I think you're going to see some money spent in digital, and particularly innovating in digital. I think you're going to see some money spent in real-time insights, which supports our research business, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I think also because we're going to an election year in the United States, you might see some spending around issues and issues advocacy in Washington.
Absolutely, yeah. So should we be optimistic overall, or do you think we are heading for a double-dip recession? We've got some terrible macroeconomic things going on. How's that going to affect the PR industry?
I can't predict where the economy is going, although I'd love to. Look, I think PR as a center plate business now in terms of marketing communications and helping to inform corporate policy versus just telling stories, I think is going to continue to grow. I think that growth in the industry overall, and the sector overall, is undoubtedly going to cool off from where it's been in the last 12 months, but we still expect to see growth in the sector. And
you mentioned advertising agencies earlier. They're obviously businesses with big challenges, but big, powerful players with access to big budgets. There's a lot of convergence going on in the industry, so everyone's trying to get a piece of social. Should we be threatened by advertising and other agencies coming into the PR sector, or actually are we beating them up on it?
Well, look, I think that there's a place for all disciplines. However, I think public relations is center plate because we've always had relationships at the center of our offering. We're used to managing relationships between brands, whether they be product brands and corporate brands, and multiple stakeholders. I think advertising is used to driving a one-way dialogue. So I think as they try to dip their finger into pies where spend is, I think they're going to have a little bit of a difficult time, whereas I think PR is now in a boom phase, it's a growth phase, it's turned into a strategic function, we believe. We believe it's got a seat at the table now at the C-suite. In fact, we're seeing a trend towards the naming of chief communication officers. We see that at GE, we see that at IBM, we see that at Walmart, where the marketing function actually is being influenced by communications more broadly. So I'd say PR, we're very optimistic.
And you mentioned research earlier, and research and measurement is crucial to making the case at that top table. Tell us about your research function and how you're developing that, and how you're persuading customers to still invest in it in tricky times economically.
Look, I think we have to look at research both vertically as a business within Edelman, so that's our Strategy One brand, and horizontally across the firm. There's tremendous data, figures that's enabled by social media, that's enabled by web and web-based technologies. So marketers, communications people, and any function of business has a ton of data to make sense of. So we're looking at putting research center plate for us to inform strategy and to inform execution by helping marketers and companies make sense of the data that's coming in. So to take all of it, stream it into one place so they can make sense of it to inform strategy and execution. We're also putting through our main firm, through the Edelman brand, putting research tools on the desktops of all of our consultants to help them glean knowledge and insights from mainstream media online, from owned media, and also from social media and web-based media.
Now we've seen agencies sort of make a big product of that, you know, putting together these suites in every office to supply that data back. How are you delivering that to your customers, and are you delivering it in partnership with their internal teams, or are you kind of offering it as a full service?
Well, look, our research business strategy one has 3 lines of business. It has its traditional primary research. It's got secondary research. It has media and web analytics and online research. So we did an acquisition of Plugged In, which is a market research online communities. And we're also starting to consult and do some strategy consulting off the back of the research data. So we're seeing research integrated into our operations as well as growing as a mainstream business. In fact, strategy one is actually a growth business for us. It was up 20% last year. We're expecting very strong double-digit growth again this year because we're finding research critical in informing strategy and real-time execution.
So to wrap up, how do you see Edelman doing in the calendar year of 2011, and what's the biggest thing you're going to be looking out for in 2012?
Look, and we had a terrific, we run a fiscal year which ended June 30. We had a
15%
terrific fiscal year. We grew 15%. Our growth has slowed a little bit since the end of the fiscal year, so we're being cautious. However, we're seeing a lot of tenders out there. Our consumer business is doing very well. Our digital business is doing very well. Our business and social purpose business is doing very well. Research is doing well. Our emerging markets business is growing gangbusters, double digit. Our developed market business has slowed, there's no question about it. But on the balance, I think we're looking for a pretty positive calendar. Looking into next year, I think we're looking at the same thing that everybody's looking at, is how are the developed economies doing, and how can you take resources that are in those developed economies, if they're underperforming, and channel them into markets which are growing.
Okay, well, Alan, thanks for joining us here at PR Week, and we look forward to a good year, but in a tough macroeconomic climate, I guess, is the overall takeaway. Thanks for joining us.
Very happy to be here as always.